today we're taking a look at the current crop of high-end smartphone cameras, and what we're going to take a look at is exactly how the different specs and form factors and everything else affect how you actually use them to take fantastic pictures. We've got an iPhone 5S over here, Samsung Galaxy S4 Zoom, the Nokia 1020, and the Sony Xperia Z1. Looking at them side by side like this and thinking about how I would use them when I shoot with a device like this, I have it in my pocket all the time. I don't want it in my bag. The Samsung itself, you can kind of tell by looking at it, is a little bit cumbersome to just slip in and out of your pocket. You feel that it's there. It is more a camera that has a phone attached to it than the other way around, like the other three. The rest of them are thin enough that you don't really notice that they're hiding away in your pockets. Physical format for me, I think, makes a big difference in practical day-to-day use. If you need a camera bag for your phone, then something's kind of wrong there. The difficulty for any camera, really, not just smartphone cameras, with a shot like this is the extremely broad dynamic range of what we're looking at. We're looking at a lot of highlights and a lot of shadows that our eyes pick up by default. When we look at this scene back here, we actually see and process all the shadow detail and the highlight detail as one. So really this is kind of a great extreme edge case to be able to test all of these devices for, and they all do a pretty good job. Out of the four, my preference is toward either the Nokia, because of the extra saturation just makes it feel a little bit better. That sky looks the way I want it to, without having to do anything to it. And the iPhone is a very even exposure with just that little bit of extra detail in the shadows. All this graffiti here is full of tons of color, and not all of it's very saturated. That one in particular, we've got some whites, some blacks, some purple and orange and blues, and just a whole lot of things going on at once. Also in fairly overcast conditions. Out of the four of them in this particular situation, dim lighting, big color variation, lots of texture. I'd say that the at least looking at them on the devices, the Sony and the Nokia have the most punchy looks to them, with the Samsung coming in a little behind that and the iPhone looking pretty neutral across the board. This is a great place to kind of show off the various zoom capabilities, but especially show off the Samsung's 10x optical zoom. We've got the zoom all the way extended here, which is really pretty impressive. That's pulling us in really, really close. I mean, a ridiculous amount of zoom on this. And again, it's optical zoom rather than any digital zoom here. So comparing it to the Nokia here, well, we can't get nearly as far in on our subject matter as the Samsung, but it is worth noting that the Nokia's zoom isn't really zoom. They're actually cropping in on the exceedingly high megapixel original that they have. So when you take that picture, it's still taking the picture as if you didn't zoom in on it at all, and then they crop in on that little fraction of it, which ends up giving you a much sharper image. Well, something that's interesting about the Nokia is that once we kick in the focus, the optical stabilization kicks in, and it really makes it feel easy to kind of hold the camera still when you're taking the picture. Looking here at the Sony, now this is the second highest megapixel count, but Sony's doing a standard digital zoom. This image quality on the preview isn't fantastic at all. We're not getting any sense of stabilization here, and actually taking the picture, if we do a quick review on that, it's better than the preview, but that quality you really wouldn't want to use even back in 1999. Finally, on the iPhone, again, also dealing with a digital zoom rather than an optical zoom. Still pretty shaky image, and the final image itself is pretty stable, but still really kind of got a lot of blur going on. This really shows that the zoom on the Samsung is really its standout feature, which you'd hope it would be in exchange for having this big lens strapped to the back of it. Shooting in conditions like this, where we're right kind of at the dusk or after sunset with a mixture of natural light in the sky and various sorts of artificial light. We're looking for how each device renders the color, but also just how easy it is to snap a picture that's pretty crisp in this low light. The ISO is going to be bumped up, the shutter speed is going to be slower, and that affects a whole lot of different things. You're going to get camera shake like we did with the Sony. Out of the four of these, the Samsung's done the best as far as the low noise, keeping noise throughout the image to a minimum, especially in the sky. There's a high degree of detail throughout the Samsung compared to the other devices. With the exception of the Sony, it was pretty quick to focus and snap the image, which is really what most people will be looking for with a night shot on a camera phone. We've seen today a number of pretty common situations that you're likely to want to shoot with a smartphone. And as an iPhone user, I'll be honest, I would upgrade to the 5S. There's no compelling enough reason for me to switch to another platform. That doesn't mean that there isn't something good about each device. The Samsung Zoom is really good, but the hardware itself is kind of clunky and big. You feel it in your pocket. The Nokia has a higher megapixel count, and that does show up in some places, especially the Zoom. Great image stabilization and a punchier, more contrasty and saturated image. And then the Sony, sadly, is just bigger and doesn't really give enough of a reason to stand out from the crowd as a camera phone. Of the three that aren't an iPhone, the Nokia is really the fun one to use. It's the one that I keep finding myself wanting to pull out and shoot with rather than feeling like I have to test it. There's just something about it, about the industrial design, the quality of the pictures it takes, and how easy it is to use the entire phone and the camera software. There are some ways where, as a camera, it excels over the iPhone.